Now, one of the key questions that comes up when we're talking about emotional detection or expressed emotion and people's ability to detect it is which of the genders is more adept at detecting different kinds of emotions? And you probably have already answered that question in terms of who tends to be more adept at it. And clearly, women surpass men in emotional cues, in detecting emotional cues. And some of that is because men don't care, you might say that. But when men want to do that, women still are quite more adept in their emotional reactivity or even emotional detection and interpretation. What's fascinating to me is to watch men in counseling situations where they have to develop their skill at empathy. And what ends up happening is that they get every bit as much adept at it as women do. What appears to happen is that women's nonverbal sensitivity explains their greater emotional literacy. Women nonverbal sensitivity. And so it's not so much what people are saying, but how they are saying it, and body posture and eye contact seems to be most helpful in this area of determining and interpreting emotional cues. When you look at a picture like this down here, which was part of a larger study, is that the areas where men and women seem to or differ is in not so much in the area of a pleasant smile in a gender neutral face. But what happens when we add an angry facial expression? The pleasant emotional face tends to be labeled, pleasant face, tends to be labeled in a feminine way far more consistently than the angry face. As a matter of fact, the angry face more often than not gets attached to masculine qualities and masculine descriptors, which raises an interesting issue in terms of how we actually gender our particular descriptions of people and so forth. Women tend to, and this is just tend to experience emotional events far more deeply with greater brain activation than men do in areas particularly sensitive. So you actually see a neurological or a brain difference in terms of the brain areas that light up and are reactive to emotional experiences. And when we talk about differences, we're probably talking about greater levels of brain activation when we talk about a deeper emotional experience, which essentially, like I said, is a greater level of brain activation. And essentially that makes sense, is that I would experience something far more profoundly if more of my brain was actually involved. And that generally is the case when we're looking at emotional detection, is that how do I empathize? Like I said, I empathize according to my own reference point. If I experience things far more deeply, then I probably am going to be able to detect emotions at a deeper level regarding a variety of experiences. So this study is quite interesting because women are also far more likely than men to describe themselves as empathic. They may, the other aspect that I will add, which isn't necessarily in your book is the idea of a feeling vocabulary. And generally what you will find is women have a far more nuanced vocabulary. In other words, instead of just saying I feel happy, they have many more words to describe the phrase happy than men. They keep it simple, it would appear, and so that doesn't mean that men can't learn it, but they are far less nuanced in their feeling vocabulary than women are. So like I mentioned, be sure and listen to the video before if you wonder about picking up on emotional cues.